Today we're talking about the brand new First Descendant update, Ultimate Yujin, a brand new dungeon, and much more. Now the big ticket item for this patch is Ultimate Yujin, and he is a big addition to the game, but there's a lot of really cool balance changes in this as well, plus new activities and new content to do. So you're going to be farming Ultimate Yujin inside of the brand new dungeon, and it does have the usual drop rates and also the material requirements that you'd normally expect. So it is the same kind of grind that we saw with the Void Vessel, with Supermassive Conductor and things like that, so I wouldn't expect anything different there, but I would say the new dungeon is okay. I would probably give it maybe like a 5 or 6 out of 10 in general. It does have the really cool Order of Truth vibe to it. However, even though on their live stream when they mentioned that they were looking at the balance and the difficulty of the dungeon after Supermassive, where people complained about the HP of enemies inside of the group play, I would say they didn't hit that mark. To be honest, a lot of this dungeon feels much tankier, even more so than Supermassive. There's even some elites and some commanders in here that even with a decent build is going to take longer than even Axion planes in some cases, and also even Supermassive Conductor. I feel like they definitely probably need to look at the HP values again. Like some of these just feel a little too tanky for what you get out of it in general, but the vibe is pretty cool and interesting, and I think you can run through it just the same as anything else. And just like Supermassive, you can jump on your hover bike and move from one station to another, and the clear time is about the same, maybe slightly longer than Supermassive, but I do think that even in solo play, it does feel like they probably can bring some of the HP values down, especially since they decided to include the Axion Planes Legion of Breach sacks that provide the defense bonus to the enemies. And in some of these rooms, like the one you see on screen right now, the breach sack respawns after you kill it, and it also has a lot of HP as well. And so in these situations, you can see it just respawned even after I just killed it once. So there's definitely you're going to feel a little bit of a drag compared to some of the other dungeons encounters that you would normally see in this game. If you have a good build or a good weapon setup with someone like Serena, it'll only be slightly bigger, but I would say that, and I haven't done party play with this, I've just been soloing it over and over, but it does seem like in general, I imagine the party play is a little bit longer than others, but let me know what your experience with this dungeon is down below in the comments. There's also a bunch of new modules added to the game, melee modules, things like that, as well as the 2 new red modules for Yujin. I just did my module combining because I forgot to do it this morning, so just make sure you head over here, do your module combining, and grab the new ones, because it's going to be super useful for you to be able to build out Ultimate Yujin once he's ready. And as is per usual, there is also a Yujin/Ultimate Yujin Descendant exclusive quest, so make sure that once you have him, you should be able to do it with just normal Yujin, but you have to have the character equipped and deployed in order to trigger the quest, but make sure you're doing that in order to do the quest, and it should be pretty cool. I'm not gonna give you any spoilers on that front, but it is another cool, like 1-hour style Descendant level quest that will give you a little more info into Ultimate Yujin, how he farmed it, and also what his story is like. Next, we got the Grim Reaper added to the game, the new Void Abyss boss. It's not the weekend yet, so we don't have the new ETA 0 list for these skins as well. This is a toxic attribute. I've run him a few times already, or her, I guess, a few times already, and it is actually a lot of damage. It's a combination of lots of AoE damage, some mechanics to dodge, but also has that HP maximum reducing effect, that debuff that you get on you as well, so just make sure you're prepared to go in as well. I haven't found a major difference between weapons or skill damage on her right now, but I think it's something worth experimenting with. It might be kind of fun to do some really cool electric builds on this as well. Additionally, this is now the time for Ancestor modules to be traded, and they also increased the caliber limit for a single module from 2,000 caliber to 10,000 caliber. That is a mighty expensive module. I've seen some listed on the site as well that are, pretty pricey. I'm curious if any of those are selling, so let me know in the comments if you actually have done the trading with the new Ancestor modules. You can find some pretty good ones on there, but again, it is, it's premium currency. It's real life currency that you're spending to get these modules on the trade site. So just let me know how that goes for you and also how that works. I probably won't be buying any because I think it's more fun to kind of grind and re-roll and get them myself just based on that as well. And I'd rather just spend caliber on battle passes and stuff like that. But it is an interesting concept, and it's kind of interesting to see how trading works now, because realistically, trigger modules were not a good test for the trading system since they're relatively easy to get and they don't scale as hard as the Ancestor modules. But the Ancestor modules are incredibly powerful, incredibly strong, and also super RNG, so they are worth paying attention to, and potentially, if you have the extra disposable income, worth buying as well. There's also a visual upgrade to the lounge, and for the people that never actually went to the lounge because they don't care that much, the spawn here in Albion, and this is going to be the elevator here, and we enter into the lounge, and there's going to be some expansions that you can use gold to expand on as well. So this was our normal lounge, this area, the area down there as well, but when you first log into the patch, you can actually go around here and spend gold to open this door, which is one of the 3 new areas that you you can enter. It's like a little garden area. You can add Descendants here at the bar. You can have some like jukebox music playing and things like that as well. Then you can come down here this way, and there's going to be 2 other expansions. You can also go straight back to Albion from here. There's an expansion here that allows you to display more weapons and items and things like that. There's also a hover bike area where you can display those too. Then if you go back this way, there's going to be another expansion over this way, which you can use to open up, and it's going to be more diorama room to show all those little goodies. But that's not all. They did add in a guide cosmetic option for this as well. So if you go over to guide, you will be able to pick up the new guide visual settings, which has this skin as an option here. It feels very much like Detroit Become Human to me, like Kara, or that Detroit Become Human Android uniform, but it fits her pretty well. And I'm actually surprised by how much she looks different when you change her style and her hair. Like, I just didn't recognize her when she was set up like this in general, but it is kind of a cool look if that's something you're looking for, and you can customize that a little bit further. And if you're wondering where to get the new guide skin, you can pick it up here inside of these collectible shops. It's actually relatively cheap, all things considered, so we can buy this real quick and we can go equip it. So now we've got that guide skin. You can also get new collectibles that they added with this as well. So you can run over there and check it out. And there you have it. There's the new guide skin set up. I'm curious if they end up using this for the story. Probably not, because it's not really canon, but you have this option here, and she should sit back down when you step away, so you kind of have that customization option as well. They've also added some new photo mode options for the lounge that you can play around with. You can change the poses and the settings and where people are set up in the photo mode. So if you really wanted to play around with doing some of this, they did add some nice functionality to it. But keep in mind, they did mention that when it comes to the lounge, they are no longer, they've postponed their major functional upgrade for the lounge, which was going to be about multiplayer, bringing other players into your lounge or joining someone else's lounge and stuff like that. They have put that on hold to focus on the core gameplay instead. So this is probably all we're going to get lounge related, except for maybe the, collectibles here and there. They also added the Devourer to the Axion Fields list. Honestly, I feel like they could just add all of the Colossus over time. Realistically, since there's only 2 up at a time and they're pretty far apart, you could level of detail them out, or MIP them out if you really wanted to, and you can get them set up that way if you really wanted to. Also, side note on this, I feel like they've been putting a lot of this room particularly on the new dungeon. I feel like they need to be more careful about doing rooms full of ranged based mobs that shoot a lot of projectiles all at once, that also has exploding mobs that die as soon as they spawn too. Like, even with like a moderate amount of defense, I still feel like some of my builds are dying in this room and some of the other rooms, just because the sheer amount of projectiles and explosions that are going off. So side note on that one. We've also got those 3 new trigger modules. One of them is super interesting. So we've got instant acceleration. If you have a movement restriction skill, you can get a burst of speed. We've got ground eruption, which is actually a pretty good, awesome opportunity for Valby. If you have a ground dot type skill, like a deployable ground dot, and you also have a global dot type skill, there's only a couple characters that can do that, then you'll be able to get some nice skill damage off of that as well. I probably would only use this on Valby. Let me know if you thought of other characters that might be able to utilize this, but I would say the best trigger module here so far is definitely going to be Infected Weapon. This one is actually, I would say, best in slot for Freyna right now. This one is incredibly strong. If you have any continuous damage type skill and you have RK Infection with a unique weapon, you can deal additional damage. And the new build for Freyna with the balance changes we're about to talk about makes her incredibly strong. I'm actually pretty excited about making some Freyna builds because this opens up a lot of really interesting opportunities. There's also 4 new modules for melee weapons, focused primarily on melee crit hit damage as well for scaling off of that. So if you're looking for those, you'll be able to find them. They're pretty easy to just combine or farm if you're looking for that, but more melee mods helps us build more builds. We've even got a brand new Mutant Cell that is also quite Freyna coded here. So Corrosive Overshield. When attacking an Overshield type skill, you get Corrosive Barrier, which gives you toxic skill power for a duration. And as far as I can tell, I mean, I haven't tested it yet, but as far as I can tell, there's no internal cooldown on this, which means you should be able to realistically get very close to full uptime on this, if not full uptime already. Of course, we got the brand new, basically bunny external component set, the Sprint Accelerator, which has a useless 2 set, but a pretty strong 4 set, which as you move faster and faster and maintain that speed, you get electric skill power as well as MP recovery, which is really good. So like it's just perfect for bunny. There's actually some pretty cool bunny builds you could probably do with this that are worth getting, and you should be getting this from the new dungeon as well. So you can see Forbidden Sanctuary is where this drops. It's pretty easy to fill out, and again, because we have the stat upgrades on external components, you can just get double blue stats on these and then upgrade them and you're good to go. So it should be pretty straightforward. So a nice little bunny addition there. Jumping into the balance portion, anytime they write balance notes, they always end up being very specific and doubling up on some of the text. So let's kind of run through this real quick. For Ajax specifically, they adjusted quite a lot on his kit in general. The MP cost on his abilities has been reduced by approximately 30%. That eases some of the MP load that he's always had as well. Damage can increase up to 2.6 times depending on defense, and the existing skill damage damage, including from modification modules, has been reduced. So you've got defense scaling on top of it, but lower base value scaling and less mana consumption, which actually isn't too bad in the long run. And the archetypes of Ajax default skills have been changed across the board to give him a little bit more options in playing around with what's available that he plays. So with Event Horizon, you got stage 1, stage 2, stage 3. They've got some pretty decent scalers here. On the final level, we've got fire rate 25% new. This is a new stat added, so fire rate increase is actually pretty sweet. Explosive attack increase, so more launcher action there. And then new, the cooldown reduction 20% is still the same there as well. For Orbit Barrier, they changed the type from Dimension to Tech. They made the calculation method for reflection damage changed as well. It's now based off of your defense too, so you can just go all in on that defense. You're also going to notice that Orbit Barrier now afflicts the new debuff Void Leakage, which is how he does the recovery and reload of ammunition and stuff. So basically, they're kind of building this around firing the launcher through the Orbit Barrier, applying this debuff, and hitting targets as well. Attacking target allows him to get Void Acceleration, which allows him to, rounds per magazine reaches 0. While he has this buff on him, he immediately reloads and deals additional damage based on his defense to scale that up as well. There's also additional damage when attacking with the firearm, explosion damage, and damage multiplier, scaling off of defense with a maximum there as well. Some changes to Void Walk, the damage baseline going down from 2000% to about 1400%, but then adding an increase to defense scaling as well. So basically what they're trying to do with all of these, which is going to be very, very consistent across all of them, is they're trying to make the attributes clearer, the archetypes a little bit like Dimension Tech a little bit cleaner, but also allow him to kind of go all in on defense, especially now that he has a taunt on his ability, which is cool, which you can see here. Expulsion, using the skill now applies taunt to enemies within a 10-meter radius, which allows them to focus aggro on you, which gives you twofold. It means that you can be a tank for your party if you want to by pulling aggro off of them, but also more importantly, because you have reflect and shield based abilities where your efficacy is based on enemies attacking you or your shields, when they don't attack you or your shields, the whole thing falls apart. So the taunt is more of like a selfish functional addition, which allows you to be able to deal damage through your kit without having to worry about the random aggro, making it so that you put the dome down and then your teammates get aggro and the enemies run away, or you put the shield down and your teammates get aggro and run away and nothing attacks the barrier, which means you don't get any benefits or bonuses, which is pretty rough. And same thing for this, the damage multiplier went down, the enhanced damage multiplier went down, but then they added a defense scaler for expulsion as well. Then for Hypercube, it now applies a defense boosting buff to allies and an attack reduction buff to enemies inside the barrier, which works with his new red mod as well that attaches it to it well. So defense increase 50% when standing in his barrier, so a big incentive to stand in it when you see it, especially if he has the ability to buff teammates offense while they're inside of it as well. Plus an attack decrease, so it makes you tankier, makes the enemies less scary, which is a nice combination. On to his red mod changes. So Void Explosion Focus is kind of like a melee weapon build in a sense. So basically what this does is you will use Expulsion and you'll get stacks of a buff that can convert into another buff as well. And when you have these buffs on you and you cause melee attacks, you can cause explosions or additional hits that do bonus damage. So it's kind of like using your big pulse AoE and then going into melee to synergize with that to do more single target damage, or doing AoE if you have an enhanced skill. They also updated Matrix Recomputation to be able to, obviously it has the taunt on it as well, but this one has been updated, so when you have this module equipped, the type of ability goes from Dimension to Tech. Same thing goes for Void Charge, so this one will do Dimension to Tech when you have this equipped, and they also changed the formula for damage proportional to defense as well. So existing skill damage has been reduced by approximately 30%. However, now it can increase up based on defense as well. And the maximum damage multiplier is the same, but the defense damage multiplier for the Void Charge module is applied to the 0.08%, different from the base value. So again, allowing more of a uniform scaling based on defense without having to do different skill-based builds for Ajax. Body Enhancement does the opposite of the ones we just saw, that once equipped, it changes Tech into Dimension for the associated abilities. And we've got Mobile Fortress, which opens up some pretty interesting opportunities for Ajax as well, and this messes with both of his barrier skills. So you can do one here where you can actually put up his ultimate, and you'll notice that as I move around, and this is with no range modules on him, but you can see that as I move around, the barrier moves with him, which is pretty cool. It also changes his first ability to be this rotating, damage-dealing shield that has a whole bunch of effects on it as well, which is pretty sweet, which again just adds more gameplay options for our buddy Ajax. We've also got Barrier Charge Explosion, which messes with two of his abilities as well, but the primary one that you need to know about is going to be his first ability, turning from a stationary deployable shield into a forward charge, which has a push effect on it as well. The damage scaling seems to be decent, but until we actually test a full build, it's going to be hard to know exactly how good this is as an option here. But you do get a pretty nice option to be able to do some damage, and with enough setup, you know, range, distance, as well as damage scaling, you can do some pretty cool things with this too. And keep in mind that this also inflicts void leakage on all enemies within charge range, which is the buff that allows him to reload his weapon when firing. So you could charge through the enemies and then shoot right after, using your weapon to recharge your ammo, like reload your weapon instantly when it runs out of ammo in the same magazine. So you can just instantly reload. So you can charge, shoot, 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 charge, shoot, 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 and it opens up another cool opportunity for him. Moving on to Yujin. So some pretty big changes on the core of Yujin in general, but it is worth noting that they did the Jaber treatment this time around, which means that two of these modules that were they were rolled into other modules and are now obsolete. First Aid Kit, you can notice on here the description says the module is no longer available, and same thing goes for Efficient Treatment. So both these modules have basically been redacted. They're, you know, deprecated. They're no longer in use. You can hold on to these just for the sake of collection, or you can just, you know, dissolve them, dismantle them, and be done with them forever, because they're not going to do anything for you ever again. These two modules are dead, and a lot of their functionality has been rolled into other modules or put into the ultimate version of Yujin. And if you're curious, they made this handy dandy chart, this little table that shows you where those modules went. And so basically the functions of First Aid Kit and Efficient Treatment, these two modules here, have been rolled into other modules. So First Aid Kit went into Duty and Sacrifice, Proliferating Allergy, Absorbed, Efficient Treatment. So those are going to be rolled into, and it just shortens the amount of red modules on how that functions. They also updated some of the skills as well, adding a movement speed increase to stop overreacting, which is pretty good. They've added solidarity healing can now be used while sprinting. I honestly feel like they need to do more of this in the game. There's definitely still some older characters like SCMO or Viessa or Valby, before we get to some of those changes there, that just feel a little bit chunky and clunky compared to others. So allowing more movement while sprinting, allowing some of those animations to clean up faster, and also have more breakpoints where the animation can be stopped or interrupted midway goes a long way. It can also be used without precisely aiming, and this is one of my biggest gripes that I had with Yujin. Like if you look at some of like the targeted healers that we have in like Overwatch or Marvel Rivals, the functionality of just having to lock onto the target and shoot for the heal like Yujin used to be is just really bad. It's just, especially if you're going against a Serena that's flying around or someone's grappling and stuff and you're trying to aim at them to heal them, it was super awkward. So now they've just made that a little bit easier to line up as well. The distance got increased by about 50%, which is useful. The MP cost went down. The healing duration is lower and is a little bit more accessible too. They also made the duration on the accelerant longer, plus the buff that it comes with. The firearm attack went up, skill power went up, and they added movement speed to it as well. So he's just a lot more functional at base without including some of his later modifications or ultimate modifications. Same thing for the serum. It can now be used while sprinting. MP cost reduction, incoming damage increase got buffed. They also added in the crit damage and skill firearm crit hit resistance reduction and skill crit resistance reduction on the target that it hits as well, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of nice. They finally made it so stimulant spray now also applies to Yujin. It was a very weird choice to not have that in there by default, but they definitely have that set up as well. The cooldown went up slightly, the MP cost went down slightly, and they also added in skill and firearm crit hit rate. So he's got a lot of buffs in his kit by default, which is crazy. Hyperactive Healing Ground can now be used while sprinting. That's a big one too. And they also added in firearm crit damage and skill crit damage on top of the crit rate that was already there. Or I should say is there now on the other ability, the Stimulant Spray, just so you can combine those two together. Then for Duty and Sacrifice, as we talked about, has rolled into the First Aid Kit. The duration has been increased, and we got some nice buffs going for that as well. Duty and Sacrifice can now be used while sprinting, which is really good. They added a category to it too, which is helpful. When it comes to Efficient Treatment, they also added some things here. The big things to take away are going to be the added stats down here at the bottom, right? So we're talking about firearm attack increase, fire rate increase, and movement speed increase. It's actually kind of cool that they're adding more movement speed to characters like this, because it does allow him to keep up with some of the other characters that are just moving so freaking fast, especially the characters that are able to use a weapon where you can put sprint speed cores on it. Not every character can utilize that, especially if you're a firearm weapon character. You can't always be using a weapon that has the sprint speed slots on their weapon core setup that allows you to get that movement speed. And so if you're restricted in that way, it's nice to have other ways to increase your movement speed so you can keep up with the group, or just, you know, improve your clear time if you're playing solo. They also made some proliferating allergy can also be used while sprinting. They reduced the MP cost on it as well, and the big thing here is they just made it stronger. So damage when defeating an enemy, 1,000 to 2,400%. Damage when the effect ends, 1,000 to 2,400%, and a bigger radius by default is quite cool. Then for Viessa, adjusted the base stats. So Viessa has a lot of things going on with her, so let's see exactly what ended up getting changed here. So the MP at level 40 went from maximum 187 to 300. This is going to be big because, you know, kind of like Nell, kind of like Bunny, there's a couple of characters in the game that just don't get enough MP, and so they're forced to run more MP modules because of this, and Viessa is one of them. She is a very MP hungry character that spams a lot of abilities. So by having maximum MP, this has an impact on the MP recovery as well, because it gives you more cushion to spend less MP, but also recover more based on your stats. For Ice Sphere, they added a flat amount of attack when attacking a Colossus or Commander, just to make sure you can get some good single target out of it. The fire rate and targeting speed of Ice Sphere has been increased. That was a big needed change. And they also made the damage go up by about double or just under double for the damage and the explosion as well. Frost Shards just got a straight damage increase, 944 to 1133 on the damage, and the same for the explosion. So just getting better across the board. For Frost Road, the shield recovery went from 3% to 5% recovery while you're in the middle of the Frost Roll. And for Cold Snap, the damage went up significantly, 3,800% to 6,500% on that one as well. For Blizzard, continuous damage 1,700% to 2,300%, and explosion damage 3,200 to 4,500%. So just across the board, more max MP as well as just raw damage increases on pretty much every ability for Viessa. They adjusted Glacial Cloud, and honestly, I really wish they would just make Glacial Cloud the way Blizzard functions normally. I feel like they just get rid of the targeting mode and the casting mode that the ability has. I just don't think it fits her very well, nor does it fit the pacing and style of the gameplay that the game has, but I digress. That's just one of my personal thoughts there. So Glacial Cloud is the one where you can throw your Blizzard out, and the damage on that has gone up as well, the same amount that you'd get on the normal one, and this is what I mean by them doubling up on this for that kind of presentation for the patch notes in general. For Hypothermia, one of her more popular mods, additional flat, Ice Needle duration went up, fire rate and targeting speed. So all these are going to be very similar to the numbers we saw before. The big difference here is going to be on Ice Needle. Based on the stage, you will get a little bit more than before. Same thing goes for Cold Snap Watch, the same kind of baseline plus increase, but the big thing here is going to be the skill effect range. This is actually really big for Cold Snap Watch. If you run this ability, is that compared to, like, you know, if you compare the size of the old Cold Snap Watch to the size of a Nez's ultimate that can fill an entire amphitheater versus this little rectangle on the ground, the size definitely needed to come up. So skill effect range by default up 55%, which will have an additive effect based on the amount that you can scale it with increased range as well. And they also increased the damage of Cold Snap Watch from 796% to 1353%. So more damage there and more size is going to be real big. They also changed Cold Cohesion, that when you have it, your Blizzard becomes a fusion option. This could make some pretty, you know, obviously AZ is kind of the build that everyone runs with. Sometimes we see Hypothermia. I don't know if there's anyone that's going to be convinced to run Cold Cohesion now, but at least, you know, having an option here to not have mismatched abilities is going to be quite nice. So you have that fusion option there. And of course, we see the same scaling that we saw in the baseline. Next up is the Poison Queen Freyna, and this is where I think a lot of opportunities for really good builds are going to show up in general. So she's got some cool stuff going on with how she functions. And remember, we also have the trigger module that's going to scale really well with her, as well as the Mutant Cell too, that opens up more opportunities there. As you can see here with Contagion Links, the interval tick damage of the dot from room 0 went from 1 second to 0.8 seconds, and the duration went down at 2, which means that it lasts a little bit less time, but it gets its damage out faster, which means it's a lot more reliable, especially when you're in groups where some Descendants are blowing up the entire screen. If you take too long to get your damage out, it's hard to be competitive from that front as well. Same thing for the Puddle, and same thing for the Toxic Reaction, which is a really nice addition too. For Venom Trauma, they did the same thing here, so a lot of those there. However, you notice on defense mechanism, they also increased the skill duration on the Plague body armor, which is going to be useful. They also increased the duration of decreased the duration of despair, but also increased the tick rate on it as well, which is going to be useful there too. Same thing goes for Putrid Venom, increasing the tick rate, but reducing the duration on these effects as well. And even more fun is going to be her unique weapon. So the additional skill power on unique weapon is almost doubled. It's like 70 something percent increased here. So 1,000 to 1764% means her unique weapon got stronger. The max bullets went up by 5. The duration went up by 50%. The tick rate, but the duration went down as well, which is a nice increase because it means it gets its damaged out faster, which is useful. And it grants additional buffs based on the number of weapon cores currently equipped. So we already did this with Glay as well, right? Like, so being able to have that weapon core as your augment, and Haley too. So now, based on how many weapon cores you have on your weapon, when you use your unique weapon, you get skill power modifier, fire rate, range, rounds, and damage reduction on that as well, which should be very achievable for anyone who has farmed any amount of the Void Erosion or just done weapon cores in general. Then for Toxic Stimulation, as you can see here, they did a nice change, which increases the defense of it. So defense increase from Toxic Stimulation went from 30% to 60%, and they also added the duration increase of 30% like we saw before. For Venom Synthesis, they added the skill duration increase as well as a major defense increase for the armor from 30% to 100%, and a trigger rate on the Plague body armor trigger rate from 45% to 100%. It honestly never needed to be lower than 100%. Having a trigger rate on something where you have to wait for an enemy to hit you on just feels really awkward. I mean, if you can be the one that's triggering the chance of proccing, I think the lower percent feels fine. You know, things like being able to use your Secret Garden buff, where every time you use a skill, you get a chance to proc, but having a chance to proc on enemies when they hit you is kind of awkward. They also added some flat attack for Colossus and Commander on Venom Injection, the same thing they did for Viessa, as well as a max shield recovery for that too. And then for Toxic Mixture, they did the duration up by double, like 5 seconds to 10 seconds, and they also increased the firearm attack increase from 0.9 to 1.5, firearm crit rate to max at 15%, and then crit rate resistance reduction at max to -20, so just a flat buff there. But in general, I think it creates a lot of opportunities. Her unique weapon is better, her dot damage happens faster, and it gets its damage out quicker. She has a great new trigger module that works perfectly with her. Like, she just has so many really cool ways to modify her now that she's definitely one of the better Descendants, and honestly, this is kind of what she needed overall. It wasn't like a major rework, she just needed to be faster, more effective with better numbers, and I think that's what they've done. Next up is my main girl, Valby, one of my favorite characters, but she's just been hard to use over the last year just because, in general, she just got power crept by a lot of other characters, and she also just has some clunkiness to her kit that makes her harder to implement. It doesn't mean you can't play her. Some of her builds are actually pretty decent, but compared to the best of the best, the creme de la creme, she falls behind because of that, and that's why she's getting some balance updates in this patch. The first of these is Max Shield Recovery has been added to water intake with damage reduction as well. This is actually super needed, especially in these, you know, we're getting into this HP inflation, tanky or more difficult mobs ever since Axion Plains, Supermassive Conductor, Medium Void Vessel, the new Forbidden Sanctuary. It's just enemies have been getting tankier, stronger, and dealing more damage, and so having this as part of their kit is actually super needed. For Bubble Bullet, they added the slow category to it, which helps. The Bubble Bullet damage went up from 469 to 845, the range increased, and they also added a laundry movement speed to -20 on the target as well. Plop Plop also got the slow category. The damage interval, kind of like Freyna, got reduced, which is great, plus the movement speed slow. For Cleanup, they added the slow, so basically all of her skills got the slow category added to it. Damage reduction of Liquefied 50% to 30%. Damage interval of Waterway is faster, and they also added in the laundry movement speed as well. Then for Laundry Bomb, which, you know, it got reworked not too long ago, maybe like 5-6 months ago, it got reworked to remove the toe and just become a giant dot field as it spawns. But in this case, they're increasing the unique weapon continuous damage by about double, or exactly double. So 52 to 104%. It does need some damage there. And they also added in the weapon core system as we had with the other characters. So same thing, skill power, fire rate, range, rounds, and fire rate there for the 5. So I think this is actually really good. They'd probably need to mess with the recoil on it because it's pretty intense, and also maybe the cooldown too, just give her a little bit more uptime on using it. But having these is not only going to just be a flat buff to the Laundry Bomb in general, but also though, because now you've got some extra damage on it. So double unique weapon continuous damage, and also some new scalars on it too, which is a nice change. Then for red modules, continuous damage on water play. This is actually probably my favorite Valby module that I use the most. 511% to 613. They probably could have gone a little bit more on this, or just made it faster. My big gripe with water play is that it has, even with max cooldown, it still has a couple seconds before you can use it again, like 2 seconds, which means you can't spam it. And the power of water play is that you can stack multiple in one spot. So by limiting how many you can stack in one spot, it limits its upper damage, especially in single target. But I will take a free, 100% increase or 102% increase for the damage increase here. Plus it does have the laundry change as well. Supply moisture now includes damage reduction, and they doubled the power of supply moisture here. So 70% up from 35% on both the firearm and the explosive attack scaling there. Both of these are actually super good. And obviously this is going to be mostly for Valby. So this is going to be a gun Valby build, now getting twice as effective as before, plus on top of the crit that's included there. For Singing Water, we've got an increase of over double actually here. So 952 to 1904% for the Seduction of Water for Singing Water. Hydro Pressure Bomb, damage went up significantly here, 2900 to 3500. I would really wish that I ask for this every single patch, and it doesn't seem to be on their list, but I feel like Hydro Pressure Bomb needs to have a way for you to plunge down to the ground while you're floating in the air like Harris can, because if you get some really good air with the Hydro Pressure Bomb, you're spending the whole time waiting for gravity to take you all the way down to the ground so you can deal damage, whereas this doesn't happen with Harris, and I think this would be a really nice quality of life to make that a lot easier to use. And obviously when you're hanging in the air falling, that's time wasted. You're not dealing damage because of this as well. The damage increase is nice and reliable, and they also made the max number of targets to inflict additional damage up by 50%, which is pretty good. Spiral Tidal Wave went up. This one actually doesn't get used too much outside of the Colossus fight that we had before, where this one was super important, and now it hasn't really been used too much since then, but it does do some decent single target damage as well. So damage going up to 15-30% on that one as well, and a little bit more on the continuous damage too. And they also added on Laundry Bomb, again, the slow category, and they changed it from fusion to dimension when you're using Spiral Tidal Wave. And they made some changes to the unique ability on several weapons. So the first one is going to be Shadow. When Shadow Dash or Shadow Slash hits, it can trigger an additional attack based on additional attack chance and additional attack damage. For Fallen Hope, using a Toxic Kill grants Toxic Aggregation to self while it's in effect. Firearm attack and status effect trigger rate increases. I think they probably just need to do a rework on this stat, by the way. I feel like attribute status effect trigger rate is incredibly ineffective for how inaccessible it is as a stat, and when it provides value, it doesn't provide all that much value. I feel like they probably just need a rework or just massively increase the value of this stat game-wide, so it has a little bit more value there in general. While it's in effect, using a ground dot type skill grants Toxic Discharge to self, which gives Toxic skill power increases. You're probably going to see this a little bit with some Freyna and stuff like that. And then when it's in effect, hitting an enemy has a chance to trigger Perdition. The deal damage for Perdition increases proportionally to the number of poison stacks on the target and the number of your toxin discharge stacks. Again, fits perfectly for Freyna. And also defeating an enemy has a chance to trigger an explosion on the target, inflicting additional damage. So Fallen Hope might be a great option for Freyna, though she might still want to run Secret Garden in some cases, depending on the build, but it does add another option for her. And realistically, it should be a match made in heaven if Fallen Hope originally had been good from the start. Truly Deadly Arson now has using a fire skill grants heat stacking, and this is a buff that converts to combustion when you deal damage with a continuous damage type skill. And while it's in effect, the power of continuous damage type skills increases, which is very Blair-centric from that standpoint as well. And Hive Master, the new tactical rifle, which hasn't been used too much. When the shock bug fires beams, it triggers discharges. Its damage increases proportionally to the number of targets affected. A visual effect has been added that indicates the beam firing interval reduction and the range, and enemy detection range, the discharge range around the shock bug beam have increased from 10 meters to 15 meters. I think this is a massive increase. The range was one of the limiting factors for this based on, how much enemies can spread out. And also when you build up the bug enough to shoot it onto a target, sometimes you can't control exactly which target gets the bug, and having a shorter range makes that a little bit more awkward, especially since you can't control or modify the distance on it by default. So this increase is actually probably the best one of the Hive Master changes. They also made updates to the party screen. And one thing you'll note about this is they smartly, this is something I think they should have done a long time ago, but they finally have it, is that when you're ready to queue, you'll notice that on these queue options, you have private, you have public, but now there is a linked button that takes you to the party finder screen. So now more players knows this menu exists, because currently, which is super awkward, previously it was like you have a social screen, a party screen, and then a party finder screen, and then a queue screen. You have all these screens fragmented all over the place with different functionalities, which means that most players don't even know they exist. But now you can click this and you can do a quick join. You can go straight to this and see it based on the tags that you have. And they also updated the party screen to be able to kind of create that too. So you can actually, like, you know, create an opportunity for you to talk to your party, connect with your party, and it makes it easier to form parties outside of matchmaking. Another big change is the synchronization value changes here. This was the stat they put into the game that allows them to dynamically buff or nerf the impact of Ancestor modules. You could make it the Riven number if you wanted to be spicy and trigger some of the commenters. But in general, because of the changes here, you can see that these numbers have changed, which means that Ajax is now going to get less value from his Ancestor modules. Same thing for Yujin, and then for Valby and Viessa as well, because they all got buffed. And then a small decrease on the Ancestor module contribution for Freyna as well, because all these characters got buffed or reworked in this patch, giving higher damage than they were before, and so they wanted to balance it out with the Ancestor modules in the game to make sure that they didn't double dip. Then lastly, to close out with the fun stuff, Albion has been, you know, gone into this punk rocker slash like Christmas rock vibe. So it's got a lot of Christmas themes here, you know, the tree and lights and all of that stuff. But you'll notice in some of the areas too, there's also some like punk rocker vibes to it, very Luna-esque in that kind of vibe. So you've got like the screen on top that says "Let It Snow." We've got like this I don't even know what the frick this says, to be honest. I'm not even gonna try. It hurts my brain to read that. If you know what that word is, type it in the comments down below. But they got like these speakers and little boxes and lights and little zappies and stars all over the place. Is really cool. Some like balloons and bubbles and like some snow going around in some of the areas of Albion, which looks really good. They did decorate some of the areas here near your RK trigger and your mastery rank up with some disco balls and all that stuff. They've got Deck the Halls and some wreaths and stuff down over here by where Harris used to hang out and before she became a Descendant. We've got Rock and Roll. This one is actually legible. You can read that one there. This one says Mike's on, let's dance. We got some lights, some arches, which are very like, you know, winter slash Christmas themed, you know, some like checkerboard, some snow over here, a stage on the far side too, some Christmas trees, some more like, you know, presents plus Christmas trees, lights, bells, whistles, some like, you know, scaffolding and things like that. So again, we got a whole new Albion to play around with, and as per usual, there are some places to sit down and hang out and have special animations if you wanted to do so. And for the shop, we've got a bundle for Ultimate Yujin. They do this every time they do an Ultimate character, so you can actually kind of see this with the setup here. So we can actually see it's got like this like I don't know, more quarantine style, like hazmat style suit with some armor on it and a pretty cool helmet that, you know, could actually look pretty cool with some colorations. You've got a spawn effect that is very Yujin coded with some like effects and a med kit that you can bring into it as well. It's got a Deceive scan that actually has his deployable that goes above his head, which is pretty cool. You got even just like this Halloween style makeup, which is very Yujin personality, a nice little fox that goes along with it as well. Then you've got the token mascot character skin for Universal Male that they always have with every patch. So if you wanted to be like a legally distinct Coke bear, Coca-Cola bear, then you can do that with a green blazer and a little thermos on the side there as well. You got Viessa's sweater, like sweater dress, I guess you would call it, a sweater dress here for her skin for the holidays. Again, a lot of people complained about having universal skins all the time, so then they're doing individual skins, and I'm sure people are going to complain about individual skins, and they'll do more universal skins, and then we'll be in this infinite loop forever until we fade away. You also got the Serena Nutcracker skin, the Winter Soldier, that you can pick up. If this is something that you like, you can pick this one up here. You also have a Freyna variant, which is basically the bottom is the schoolgirl skin that they had before with just a hoodie on top, and it's got like this like reindeer hoodie that goes on top of it as well, and it does have some specularity and a little bit of illumination there on the reindeer nose at the top. And it also, if you want to get the bundle, comes with some UI themes that fit Christmas as well. There's also the sweater dress variant for Glay, which is very similar to the Viessa one. They just kind of moved around where the pieces go. So if you want, like, if you like the sweater dress vibe, then you can pick it up for Glay or Viessa. Those are both available. And you got snowball fights and some other themes like that. There's also some new figurines and things that you can get for your lounge if that's something you're into. So a lot more of like the Christmas themed vibe. These are all available in the store. And that just about does it for the patch. It's a pretty big patch. Ultimate Yujin, a lot of reworks for Ajax, Viessa, Valby, Freyna a big one too, and then just kind of some more value there. Some new modules, new trigger modules, Ancestor trading coming online, new cosmetics, a theme for Albion. So a pretty good patch overall. Let me know where your head is at if you are enjoying this patch, how you feel about the grind, how you feel about the new dungeon, how you feel about the new modules, and also if you're engaging with the Ancestor module trading. I'm curious to see if anyone is using it. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm wanted to help this video get seen by more people. And don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.